have the Republic of Ireland national ladies team glorifying in that terrorism, glorifying in that child murder. Baby uh, Alan Jack, Abercorn Square, 1972, 5 months old, showered with an IRA bomb, showered with glass, obliterated, perforated with that glass, killed outright. Michelle Bird, Shangle bomb, 23rd of October in 1993, going to buy a wreath for her grandfather with her mother and her father. Innocent people blown up, killed to death by an IRA bomb. Is that, are we living in a two-tier society? Are we living in a day, in an age, in where that if you do not support globalization, that if you are unionist, if you want to maintain the United Kingdom, if you come from Northern Ireland, if you're white, if you're a male and you're white of a certain age, that you will be prosecuted. The full weight of the law will weigh down on you. I want to play a little video clip. And this is a video clip that was in our news today. Now, this is to do with the Irish national women's football team who were playing in Glasgow, Scotland last evening, from my understanding. And well, we've seen this before. And for those of you who haven't seen this, I want to play this very, very short clip. Now, that was the Irish national women's football team, and they were singing "Ooh Ah Up the Ra." Now, try to like understand the gravity of what you've just heard there. I say the gravity of what you just heard. You see, this was a national football team. You could imagine, say, for example, the English football team, or let's put it in a better context. Let's say the Northern Ireland football team, singing like, up the UVF or up the UDA. You could imagine singing that. You could imagine the fallout. You could imagine what the media would be saying whenever that they would have heard such a thing. Please leave your messages in the live chat and try to give me an example of what you think that would have happened if it had been, say, for example, the Northern Ireland ladies football team singing "Ooh up the UDA" or up the UVF or whatever. Try to give us an understanding of what you think that would have happened in the media today had that been from a Protestant unionist or a loyalist background, a national team, a national women's team singing and glorifying. Because make no mistake, that's what it was. It was glorifying IRA terrorism, and in a way, that would add insult to the injury of the many victims that IRA organization created. Picture you being a living family member of someone who was blown up or shot by that IRA organization, and you hear the Irish national women's team after winning last night in Glasgow. You imagine that they would be, imagine how a family member would feel by hearing that. I mean, would that add insult to the injury to the family member of a victim? Would that re-traumatize a victim or a victim's family member? The Belfast appeasement, it was a disguise. It was built for appeasement, swindle, and lies. That's the Good Friday Agreement. But ever since that agreement has came into place, you see, these IRA terrorists have been placated. There's been a blind eye turned to them. They've had under the table deals from Tony Blair. They've had, effectively, they've been given an amnesty. That's what's happened. The heaven and earth has been moved in order to facilitate these people, to placate these people, to put them in government. Heaven and earth has been moved for that. And it doesn't matter what they do, when they do it. It doesn't matter if they murder people. It doesn't matter if they maim people. In 2015 in the markets, they murdered 2 people. And don't let anybody tell you, and I continue to say this and press this home, that it was anyone but the conglomerate that is linked to Gerry Adams and Mary Lou McDonald and Michelle O'Neill, which is occupying that house, which is Stormont off the Upper Newtownards Road in Belfast. You see, even if they murder people, who remembers the Bobby Story funeral? They make rules in Stormont and they go and they break the rules with no consequences, absolutely no consequences. And then here we have the Irish, now the Irish, the Republic of Ireland national ladies team, glorifying in that terrorism, glorifying in that child murder. Baby Alan Jack, Abercorn Square, 1972, 5 months old, showered with an IRA bomb, showered with glass, obliterated, perforated with that glass, killed outright. Michelle Bird, Shankill bomb, 23rd of October in 1993, going to buy a wreath for her grandfather with her mother and her father. Innocent people blown up, killed to death by an IRA bomb. How do those people feel? How does the family members feel? How do those family members feel whenever they see the national ladies football team, the Irish national ladies football team, glorifying that terrorism which murdered and maimed and killed and blew up their loved ones? How do those people feel? That's a real question. And then we hear the Irish politicians, Simon Coveney. Let's focus in on Simon Coveney, who said that it was wrong, but was basically saying, move on, there's nothing to see. Doug Beattie, well, it's happened and it shouldn't have happened, and he complained about it, but let's just move on. Let's move on. Let's not deal with this problem. Let's not draw this line in the sand and say, hang on a wee minute. Is this what we're going to get in this so-called New Ireland? Is this what we're up against? The glorifying of terrorism, the glorifying of people who has held this country to ransom for all of these years, who has murdered and maimed and killed and shot to death and blown up our nearest and our dearest. And well, they've murdered more Catholics than anyone in the so-called conflict over the years. So let's just compare what you just heard there, i.e., no pun intended, but let's just compare what you just heard there from the Irish national ladies football team glorifying terrorism, murderous scum. That's what they were glorifying. They were glorifying child murder. They were celebrating child murder. That's what they were doing. No matter why they know that they were doing it or not, that's exactly what they were doing. Now let's compare something that happened in Northern Ireland just a few years ago. Let's try to understand, are people being treated differently if they come from a unionist background? Are people being treated differently if they come from a Protestant or unionist or a loyalist background? Or is there a two-tier system of justice in this country? Are the media trying to brush over the gravity, the seriousness of what we just heard there with reference to Irish national women's football team glorifying terrorism, glorifying child murder, adding insult to the injury of victims? Are the media trying to brush over it in a way that they sort of dealt with it, but, well, they turn a blind eye. They don't add any weight to their argument. Where's the calls for these people to be railroaded out of football? Where's the calls for, are you ready for it? Glorifying terrorism in the Western world is against the law. Well, you could be prosecuted for glorifying terrorism according to the terrorism laws that are available. So let's now compare something that happened in Northern Ireland. I think it was 2012, some 10 years ago. But I can compare and equate what you just heard there with this exact case. So let me actually share my screen and we'll go on and we'll talk about something that I see just in front of my very eyes. And I really want to try to press this home too. I really want to equate what you just heard there with this exact case. I want to ask the question, is there a hierarchy of rights in terms of the law? Are everyone not, well, subject to and equal under the same law? Will some people be tried or convicted for causing offence? Because that certainly caused offence to me. That certainly would have caused offence to victims of IRA terrorism. Let's actually talk about a case that happened in 2012. So, in front of you, you will see a BBC report here, a news headline from the BBC. So it says here that the young Conway Volunteers Band members overturned sectarian song convictions. This is what it says. So I'm flicking on down. It says 13 members of a loyalist band have successfully appealed convictions for provocatively playing a sectarian tune outside a Catholic church. The young Conway Volunteers members were prosecuted over their conduct outside St Patrick's Chapel on Donegal Street, North Belfast, on the 12th of July in 2012. They had denied playing the famine song as they marched in circles at the site. Prosecutors did not oppose their appeal, but only because they had agreed to being bound over to keep the peace. So, whilst that they were, let's just go back here again. Young Conway Volunteers Band members overturned sectarian song convictions, but only because that they had been bound over to keep the peace. So they were still actually prosecuted for this exact event. So on the 12th of July on 2012, if anyone that has ever been at Carlisle Circus, whenever the bands are leaving to go to the Eton Dairy Field, well, what happens is that, as the huge parade would get underway, there are sometimes stops in the parade. I used to be a band member many, many years ago myself, and there's sometimes stops along the way in where that maybe another portion of Orange Men are joining into the parade from East Belfast or from Sandy Row or from the Shore Road or from wherever. So this parade sometimes stops in order to let the other band members join the huge parade. Now, these people just happened to be stopped outside a chapel on I think it's Donegal Street is exactly where it is below Carlisle Circus. I think that's what they call it. Now, they were playing a song which goes way, way, way back to my band days. Now I'm 54 years of age. Last time that I was in the band is whenever I was probably 20 years of age. So we're talking like 34 years ago. Now, back in that day, the band that I was in, well, it would have played a song by the Beach Boys called Sloop John B. So these people were playing the tune, which many, many bands from throughout our province actually plays, and they call that song Sloop John B by the Beach Boys. Now, they were accused by nationalists, Republicans, agitators from outside of a chapel in Donegal Street here, and they were accused of actually playing a thing called the famine song. Now, they were accused of being provocative because they were playing this thing called a famine song. Now, Slip John B by the Beach Boys, but because that they had heard that some people were using the same music to a thing called the famine song, they accused these band members of provocatively playing this outside a chapel. Now, I'm going to ask people to compare this with what you just heard with reference to the women's uh, Irish national football team. You see, the charge here at Donegal Street here was that these people were being offensive by playing what it was that they were playing. They were being offensive. This is the charge that was laid against them. They were being offensive because that it hurt people's feelings that, well, a famine happened and this song has been put to the music of this song, Slip John B, has been sung along with some controversial words to do with the famine. So what it did was this caused offence to the people at the chapel. Now I'm now going to go back, and I now want to read read from what it is that I see in front of me. So 13 members of a loudest band have successfully appealed convictions for provocatively playing a sectarian tune outside a Catholic church. The young Conway Volunteers members were prosecuted over their conduct outside St Patrick's Chapel in Donegal Street, North Belfast, on the 12th of July 2012. They had denied playing the Famine song as they marched in circles at the site. Prosecutors did not oppose their appeal, but only because they agreed to being bound over to keep the peace. So they were still prosecuted and bound over to keep the peace. So the provocative act is exactly what this says here. Events outside the church that day marked the start of a series of flashpoint incidents when subsequent parades passed Donegal Street. During the 3-year prosecution, the band members were accused of a provocative act likely to cause public disorder or breach of the peace. Now, I'm going to say here that during the 3-year prosecution, band members were accused of a provocative act likely to cause public disorder or a breach of the peace. Now, let's take you back to what happened last night with the Irish ladies' national quote-unquote football team. To many people in Northern Ireland who's been held ransom by this same IRA organisation, to many people who has lost loved ones to this terrorist IRA organisation, to many people who have had to endure their democracy being removed, a border being placed in the North Channel as a result of the threat of violence by the same IRA organisation. Surely that this is grounds for us to accuse the Irish national women's football team of a provocative act. Which could and is likely to cause public disorder or a breach of the peace. I mean, I was on a trip to Greece in early July. I was on a coach. I got on a coach whenever I got off from Greece, and there was a lot of people from the Mike area of Armagh, between Armagh and Uri on the border. And they were nice young people, and I have to say we were having a chat, and and they seemed like ordinary young people. That was until they got on the coach and they had a few drinks in them, and they all started singing "Ooh Ah Up the Ra." You see, how I felt when I was on that coach is that I really, really did feel that was a provocative act to me, because I've lost I've lost as close as family members by IRA, at the hands of IRA terrorists. And it was a provocative act to me that these young people on that bus had actually been singing "Ooh Ah Up the Ra," and and it could have well presented itself even on that bus in a public order offence. It was likely to cause disorder or at least a breach of the peace. Because I tell you what I wanted to do is that I wanted to stand up and really challenge these people on, like, what is it they're glorifying here? Are they glorifying the murder of Alan Jack in Strabane, who was showered by an IRA bomb whenever they planted a bomb, whenever they detonated that bomb, whenever that bomb showered that 5-month-old baby with glass, literally perforating that child to death? Is that what they're glorifying? Are they glorifying, the 2 children that were murdered in the Shankill bomb? Is that what they're glorifying? And I really wanted to do that on that bus, but I refrained from doing that, because I'll tell you why that I did, is because that there were people with me, and I didn't want to cause them any let's just say I didn't want to make them feel uneasy. So I decided to bite my tongue. So you see, what I'm aiming at here is that those chants can cause, and I'm reading again from what it says here to do with these band members. You see, those chants can cause all sorts of problems. It can cause, and I'm going into the article here, that it can cause, it is a provocative act likely to cause public disorder or a breach of the peace. And it really needs to be stopped, and it really needs to be eradicated from our society. But I then ask the question, what is the difference between those band members who were prosecuted by the law and the Irish national ladies football team? What is the difference? There is absolutely no difference. So why are these people not being prosecuted for glorifying terrorism? Why are these people not being prosecuted for adding insult to the injury of the victims that the IRA had created? Why are these people not being prosecuted? Why are they not being put out of the Irish football team? Why are they not being identified and literally railroaded out of society? I mean, there's this thing at the minute that if you were a unionist, if you believe in your nationality, there's this thing called cancel culture. And you believe me, if you were involved in that, and if you are wanting to protect your nationality and you're not for globalization, if that's what you're wanting to do, you would be cancelled from your job. You wouldn't even have a job. You would never get a job. You would be cancelled from everything if you were to participate in such an act. So this is why that I drave home exactly what I'm driving home this evening on this. So it actually goes into detail here in this article, where it actually names all the people that were prosecuted. It says the famine song, which includes the line, "The famine is over. Why don't you go home?" It has been declared racist by senior judges in Scotland. So it's been declared racist. I would hear, however, the defendants claimed they were performing the Beach Boys hit Sloop John B, which they were, which has a similar tune but different lyrics. In fact, that is the only lyrics that should be sang with that music, is Sloop John B by the Beach Boys. So it says here the 10 adult defendants, and it lists their names in this article. It literally lists their names. It is actually publicly shaming these people for something they didn't even do. It says charges were also brought against three others who were juveniles at the time of the incident. During the original contested hearing at Belfast Magistrates Court, the defence lawyers played songs of a Swedish folk singer, a Star Trek enthusiast, and football fan chants, all to the same tune. In other words, in a bid to have their clients cleared. Anyway, look, again, I'm going to go back here and I'm going to take this down. So you see where I'm going here? And there's a huge question to be asked here, is that are we living in a two-tier society? Are we living in a day, in an age, in where that if you do not support globalization, that if you are unionist, if you want to maintain the United Kingdom, that if you come from Northern Ireland, if you're white, if you're a male and you're white of a certain age, that you will be prosecuted. The full weight of the law will weigh down on you. This is what happens. This is what happened in this case of the band playing outside that chapel. They were taken to court. They were prosecuted. They had the charges lessened, albeit that, but they actually were prosecuted for causing offence. Now, again, we ask the question, were these ladies in this national football team, were they causing offence? Well, of course they were. Were they causing offence to the same magnitude as these other guys? Well, I would say that these other guys are very, very small beer compared to what it was that these young ladies done last night. And yet there's nothing to see here. Brush over it, move on. They apologised. Well, certainly the team has apologised. And nobody seems to want to do anything about it. If it is good enough for this band to be prosecuted outside this chapel for causing offence, then it is also good enough for these ladies to be prosecuted for causing offence to the many IRA victims. We have to stand against this. We have to insist that this cannot be permitted in our society. If other politicians want to glorify these terrorists, to suggest that it's okay to glorify these terrorists, then our politicians should have no truck with them. Simply put, they should have absolutely no dealings with these people whilst this type of glorifying of terrorism is going on.